Probably the biggest indictment about American Christianity is how very little it calls us to account to change our ways, and how often we use it as a way of blessing or sanctioning the directions in which we already want to go. And we treat it like it's guardrails on our life to keep us from going off of the extreme sides, but really doesn't interfere with what we perceive to be our divine mission or what we want to try and do. Very, very rarely did I find leaders for whom their faith really transformed them to do something entirely different or called their entire lifestyles into account. There are some glorious counterexamples. I mean, probably one of my favorite is Richard Stearns, who was the CEO of Lenox China, leading one of the leading luxury goods organizations in the U.S. And in the end, God really calls him to be engaged in the lives of the poor, and he becomes drawn to that. And in the process, World Vision starts looking for a new CEO, and they come to Rich Stearns. Who would have thought somebody would go from driving a Jaguar in leafy suburban Philadelphia to becoming head of one of the leading, global organizations committed to trying to eradicate childhood poverty? They don't always go together. Most of the time, those big sort of kingdom-wide questions of what are we doing strategically to advance the gospel in our world? How are we making this culture more Christ-honoring? How are we upholding biblical virtues of justice, of truth, of mercy, of love? Those kinds of questions really don't interject the leaders' lives that I interviewed very often. There are some moments in which it occurs, and you can see some real transformation. Sometimes it occurs as the individual leader is sort of experiencing having a spiritual renewal or making a deep profession of faith, where you get these sort of radical transformations. I think about John Aden, who's now a senior vice president at Walmart, was the CEO of Mac Tools, and how his faith awakening really changed the way in which they were doing business and the way in which they sort of understood the work that they were doing. We have a pretty naive understanding of how faith makes a difference in our work life. Most people just simply see it as a mechanism for evangelism, when in fact I think it can actually be a mechanism for extending God's rule in our world, making God's kingdom come into the here and now, break into our everyday, mundane reality,